What is the most fricked up thing you've seen your parents do? My dad was responsible to pay the cemetery fees for my grandparents' plots, urban Latin America. He let the lease expire and they tossed their remains in the trash. That seems like a really stupid system. My parents once began arguing over a casual sex website, most likely similar to Tinder but for married couples. My dad began raging, threw and broke glasses, and hit and raped my mom against the Christmas tree. The most traumatizing part was when he stormed to his closet, got his gun from the gun safe, and put it to his head and cocked it. I was in my room crying my eyes out, but I still remember how terrified I was when I heard the gun, just waiting to hear the shot ring out. If my mom hadn't knocked it out of his hand, I honestly believe he would have shot himself. This was probably around 5-6 years ago, but it's one of the many reasons why I honestly hate my father. One of my older twin brothers is autistic but usually could do movies very well. I think it was Toy Story 2 and he started to get overstimulated, so my mom got up to walk him out. A group of teenagers in the back screamed at him that he was a retard and tripped him as they were walking by. My mom absolutely slapped the crap out of one of them, who then grabbed my mom's shirt or something. My dad was there in like on second and actually picked the kid up out of his seat and over the next row. One of his friends tried to hit my dad, so my other twin brother did this hop over the seat thing and into the melee. I was like 6 or 7 years old, completely convinced that my entire family was going to jail and I would be forgotten in the movie theater. I don't think anything ever came of it, and I honestly don't remember if the cops were called or if management got involved, but a few minutes later my other brother just told me we were leaving and we got Baskin Robbins on the way home. Good for your mom and dad, frick those kids. I was taken away from my parents for fighting back when I was 15. There were no previous reports of abuse, so I was charged with misdemeanor assault and ended up in foster care, then a halfway house. Edit. Before foster care and after jail. They sent me to rehab as punishment for claiming self-defense, spending my meager college fund on the venture. They told me that they'd take me out as soon as I recanted, and somehow gotten my sister to try to convince me to go along with it. I was there 4 or 5 months, until the money ran out. As a condition to graduate from the halfway house, I had to complete my probation. As a condition to complete my probation, I had to graduate from the halfway house. I was screwed. A few months before HS graduation, I'd made plans to move out with a friend and attend a local community college, leading to an arrest for a probation violation. I went before a judge who'd received a 4-page letter from my mom basically saying I deserved the harshest sentence under the law, and a page-long letter from me explaining the catch-22, my compliance with all other requirements, and my enrollment. It turns out that it was the same judge who took my sister away, and my mom was almost charged with contempt for screaming at the judge when I was released from my probation. On my way back to the halfway house, my mom nearly drove the director of the halfway house and I off the road, screaming at us and flipping us off. When I got back, I finished packing my things and moved into my friend's place. Not even 2 hours had passed when my mom showed up on my friend's mother's lawn, across the street from the elementary school she taught at. My mom was there for over an hour screaming at this woman, telling her that she was harboring a fugitive, and that I was going to rape her daughters and murder her sons. About a week later, I saw the letters my friend's mom brought home that had been sent to everyone at the school about the dangerous fugitive she was harboring. The lady nearly lost her job and had a major breakdown. She also somehow still had the authority to pull me out of school, which she did out of spite. All of my teachers had been harassed by her at one point or another, and banded together to help me graduate early. I've got an unrequited friend request sitting in my Facebook from my mom, and a few years ago she showed up and tried to bribe my love with a meal and a fleece jacket. I ordered something expensive and lost the jacket. Bonus: when my parents moved to NC, their friends threw them a going away party. They all pitched in and made this sweet scrapbook with all their shared memories. We all gathered to watch my mom unwrap the presents. When she opened that one, she glanced over it, said how cheap, and tossed it aside. I'm just happy you won the legal battle. Good guy, judge. When I was 15, I started having sex. Dad found my boyfriend's condoms in my room and in rage, shaved all my hair off. I had waist-length hair and he forced me into a chair and pulled all my hair into this tight, painful pony at the top of my head and just chopped it off. I cried for weeks. That is really horrible. I had to experience that kind of humiliation. Like having sex was the worst thing I could ever do. Dad beating up my mom was pretty fricked up. I was like 2 or 3. Brother wasn't born yet and I'm 3.5 years older and vividly remember it. This was back when police involvement and domestic violence typically meant separating the two for a night with SOP. Finally something I can contribute properly to. Hard to pick one, but here are the highlights. My mother broke a beer bottle over the living room table and slashed her wrist with it because we confronted her about doing coke. Again, she put several rocks through the windshield of her car. Tried to jump out a 5th story window, only to find window. Crazy. Barged through the door at 3 AM with 2 of her H-addict friends barely able to walk because they tried to jump someone who had a bat. Went from sitting on the couch to leaping over the living room table and putting a fist into the TV in one motion. Crashed a car she got 2 days prior and to celebrate walked into the nearest bar. Countless evictions for noise complaints. But my personal favorite, bit a cop while being dragged out of the house only to immediately scream police brutality when she was met with a knee to the forehead. What the frick? I didn't see it, but I sensed my dad was cheating on my mom and I was right. He told her he had to go out of town to do work on a customer's house and that she was having him sleep in a spare bedroom, and I said, "Mom, he's freaking cheating." She said, "No, this is normal, TF. Your parents may be swingers." My dad is a drug addict. When I was around 11, he left me, my brother, and mom for another woman who also lived at the crack house. I didn't see him for months until my 12th birthday. I remember being so happy that he came to see me for my party. Then after everyone left, he took all my birthday money so he could go buy more drugs. I think that was the day I began to see my dad in a different light and sadly started to resent him. He eventually came back and got clean. But I swear drugs changed him into a completely different person. He became verbally and mentally abusive. It took me years to realize the stuff he did was kinda fricked up. I dropped a piece of candy before we left the house for something. When we came back, the candy was infested with ants and it was literally covered with an entire colony or something. My mom got so mad, she picked it up and shoved it in my mouth. I can't stand bugs for the rest of my life. Father choked me out. Mother slapped my sister with a sock. Father whipped my sister for telling me where he was. Mother started to beat me up for disrespecting her by questioning her faith in Christ. My mother constantly screamed at my younger step sister for basically just existing. It got so bad that my sister was constantly anxious and ended up throwing up her dinner one night in fear. My mom made her eat her vomit and then moved all her crap into the bug-infested basement. That night was the last time my sister ever ate dinner with the family and the last time she lived in the main house outside the basement. She was taken from the house and placed in a group home about a month later when my mom got tired of doing more horrible crap to her. I haven't seen her since. It's been 15 years. My mom was a drug addict and I remember walking into her room and she had something in tin foil that she was heating up with a lighter and inhaling the smoke through a straw. It was I was told. She also stabbed a rat that was stuck to a glue trap because she wanted to send a message to the rest of them. I could write a book, but this is probably from at least top 3. Getting woken up at 2:30 in the morning and kicked out of my bedroom out to the nasty couch my father drunkenly pee on in his sleep every night, so that he could screw some nasty bar trash he brought home in my room. I argued with my dad about this until I thought it was going to get physical. The lovely lady he brought home that evening still had no qualms about screwing my dad in my room after this all transpires. When I was maybe in 10th grade one night my stepdad started fighting with my mom, which was normal, but when he started choking her I had to pull him off only to have him start pounding on me. I was not a large boy and this was a full-grown man. Now, this wasn't the first time that he had hit me, but it was the first time my mom saw the whole thing. Her reaction was to walk slowly upstairs, pausing at the top to look back at my face, shocked and bleeding, before going into her bedroom and slitting her wrists. I don't think I've ever felt more abandoned than in that moment. I'm so sorry, and as a mother I can't imagine. I can tell by the fact that she tried to kill herself that she also felt absolutely helpless in that moment. I hope you both got help. Really, what an awful piece of crap your stepdad is. My mom and dad told me I deserved to be strangled by my 10-year-old brother for stopping him from bashing my 7-year-old sister's head in with a large rock. Yes, I'm 22, but I will say I'm only 5 feet 1 inches and he's got 6 inches on me and probably 50 pounds. He's huge for his age and I've always been tiny. My 19-year-old sister also threatened to call the cops on me for hitting him when I hit his arms to get his hands off my throat when I couldn't breathe. Anytime we play a game we have to include him. If he breaks rules I'm immature and acting like a child if I ask my dad to correct him. If I address it with him I'm picking a fight and trying to cause problems. If anyone else breaks the rules he brings down the hammer of God and everyone except brother is grounded for a month from everything. My parents still try to ground me despite only living with them for a couple more weeks and only moving back in because my roommate was abusing me and my dog. And my 19-year-old sister routinely threatens to call the cops on me for abusing my brothers and sisters for stupid crap. The only time I go hands-on with anyone is if they are hurting me or someone else seriously. He beat on me for an hour the night he tried to strangle me twice before I did anything. And then I only made it so I could breathe and continued to take the beating until he kicked my dog in the face. And this is after he beat on my 7-year-old sister for a while. The 19-year-old sister once threatened to call the cops on me for walking between the 10-year-old brother and the TV when he was watching TV. Dude, you need to get the frick out and call size. I told this story before, but when I was a little I was playing on the porch of my house with a friend of mine. We had cap guns that we were pretending to shoot at each other. My dad saw us from the window, rushed out. He was livid. He grabbed the cap gun from my hand and smashed it on the railing of the porch and told me to get inside. After that I was not allowed to have toy guns and I didn't know why. All I knew was that I had never seen my dad that upset in my life. When I was in my 20s, my mom told me that when my dad was a teenager a friend of his shot himself in the head in front of my dad and a bunch of their friends. I finally understood why he was so upset seeing me and my friend shooting at each other with these guns that looked pretty realistic aside from the orange tip. It's not so bad. Your dad had a very fricked up memory from when he was a teen. Seeing his own son with a gun on his hand, even a fake one, probably made him remember that memory. So I'd say your father did good. He wasn't trying to harm you. My dad got a dog as an early birthday present for my sister and I after my parents divorced. On my birthday, after my sister was asleep, he got drunk and beat the dog until I hid under a dresser, then got mad and threw empty bottles of beer at me. Then on my sister's birthday said that he put the dog down because it was misbehaving and had a broken leg because of an accident. 90% sure it was from him. He then later that day pulled out a gun when I pee him off, in front of my sister, and said I made him kill the dog. Needless to say my sister hates me, and I hate my dad. When I was around 7-8 years old I was in the car with my dad when a car coming the other way hit a fox. I still remember the way that thing looked lying on the road afterwards. It was breathing but not well and a large part of what I thought should have been inside the fox was now on the road. So my dad stops the car and tells me play Snake on his new phone. Mobiles were a pretty new thing at the time, which I now realize was to distract me while he went to check on the animal. Even at that age I could tell there was no saving that thing and I bloody sucked at snakes, so I was looking out the window again pretty quick. In time to see him look at the dying animal and then step slowly onto its throat to stop it suffering and then using an old blanket from the boot to carry it off the road. Now I'm not suggesting this would be as traumatic as some of the other posts on here. And my dad certainly wasn't an abusive man, but I don't talk to him a lot and that image of him looking down at the thing is so thoroughly burned into my head to this day. Looking back I would have done the same. Still seemed pretty messed up at the time. It would have benefited you for him to explain what he did. My dad went through a 2-month-long phase where he just refused to wear pants in the house when guests weren't present. When I asked him to put on pants for dinner, as we sat around the glass table, he didn't take it well. He ranted about how do I manage in a locker room and threatened to make me watch Gay P to build my tolerance. I was 16 at the time and none too thrilled. My mom was prescribed morphine for a back injury and she got addicted. Meanwhile one of my siblings was recovering from a near-death experience and my parents were on the brink of divorce. Mom decided to go cold turkey during this time, and during an argument with my dad, she tried to cut her own hair and my dad had to wrestle the scissors out of her hands after she almost cut her neck open. They got separated, but after 2 years were back together and my mom never touched pain meds again. My dad cheated on my mom, so my mom cheated on my dad. She got pregnant. He found out and beat the crap out of her, slamming her into the wall, kicking her and bashing her face against the concrete, all right in front of me. I was 3 and 1/2, cowering in the corner as he screamed and abused her. My dad picked up a dead rat off the ground outside and put it in the garbage, then handed out tortillas to my sisters and I without washing his hands. I remember when I was about 3-4, standing in front of the fireplace with my siblings and being sad as the fire roared. A few years later, I was told the reason I was sad. It was Christmas morning and my father got a bit peeved when he felt that his children did not express the proper level of happiness at receiving gifts. So, he threw them all into the fire. Years later I asked my mom if we had received a puppy that morning. We had not. Years later I asked my mom if we had received a puppy that morning. We had not. Relieved sigh. I have once seen my grandpa pour orange juice into a nice, hearty bowl of cornflakes. I confronted him about it. He just shrugs and starts eating, saying that I've already gotten this far, why go back? When I was a kid on Christmas morning I walked into my parents' room to ask if I could open my presents, only to find my mom riding my dad in the reverse cowgirl position. When my mom noticed me she told me to go away as she was having her Christmas present first. That's actually kinda hilarious. I hope you have no trauma over it. My mom kicked me out when I was 16. I lived with my uncle for a year. She swore up and down I left on my own. While I was living with my uncle my passport expired and because of that I had no proof of citizenship. I was basically illegal and couldn't finish school. My mom blames me. I'm 21 now and she's disappointed in me. Bonus: she kicked me out because I didn't bring in the groceries from her car the night before. It was about 2-3 feet of snow and still piling. I didn't bring in the groceries for a number of reasons. 1. The snow. 2. I was just fed up with how she talks to me and how she asked. 3. I went to look at the groceries and she went to Costco and it must have been 80 lb plus worth of stuff. 4. This one is like a bonus. We were living in a multi-million-dollar condo owned by Charlie Samuels with like 2 flights of stair to get to kitchen. I tried to appreciate this, but please believe me, I'm from the hood. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens. The only reason they could afford to rent this place for $2,600 a month was because we was previously in a situation where we were living rent-free for 2.5 years. I still think renting that beach condo was the dumbest crap they could have did with that money. They ended up having to downsize drastically after like 2 years and eventually moved down south. And you won't believe this crap. I broke down, started crying. I looked up and seen my first shooting star. I know it was dumb, but I wished that things would get better soon. I grabbed a few things and went inside. In the morning my mom slapped me up and told me to get out and don't come back. She used to say she obviously didn't mean it, which I understand, but now she acts like I left on my own because I wanted to stay with my uncle. I stayed with my uncle for 10.5 months. I think my mom called once or twice. My uncle lived about an hour bus ride or a 30-minute drive away. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry you have to deal with her. Drove drunk with us kids in the car to go see the Christmas lights at the rich fancy people's houses. Slid off the road into a wall and almost flipped that idiotic little Nissan Sentra that never had an oil change. Kicking my older sister out at 14 for having a BF and then again at 16 and 17 for the same thing. She left the moment she turned 18 and graduated HS. In a very heated argument my dad locked himself in the bathroom and wouldn't open it despite my mom's wailing and sobbing. She went into their bedroom and shot the ceiling so he would come out thinking she had shot herself. I heard him threatening to knock her out if she got up, so I ran into there and got between them. But later that night when they had made up he said he only threatened her because he had to use his phone and prepare to dial 911 if her breakdown continued. He also told her I didn't hear the gunshot so she wouldn't be embarrassed. My dad found another woman on Facebook, started a thing with her while being married to my mom, That new woman was married as well but left her husband for my dad. My mom found out, they filed for a divorce. Then the new woman moved in, so my dad, my mom and the new woman shared a house. My mom lived downstairs, my dad upstairs with the new woman. After a week my dad snuck around with my mom and told the woman to pack her things and move back. Now they blame us, their children, for messing it up and we don't know why. So my sister and I were completely different when we were kids. I was very submissive because I knew I'd get beat hard if I wasn't, and my sister was a born fighter. Every time she'd get in trouble, deserved or not, she would try to kick, scream or run away from my parents to avoid the abuse. One time we both got into trouble for whatever reason and I got a few good hits and did my best to cry hard. If I didn't, they would take that as a hint I needed harsher hits. Well, this time she fought ferociously to not get beat. I witnessed her 7-year-old body struggle with all her might for about a minute before my parents had enough and my mom screamed hold her down, so my dad, who was very muscular, pinned her down with excessive force while my mom found the more painful weapon she could find on hand, a wooden spoon, and whipped her 39 times on the butt, thighs, back, anywhere so she couldn't sit, sleep, or even stand without crying in immense pain for a week. I was 9 then and I can still remember it as if it just happened to me. Today my sister is very submissive to anyone and refuses to fight anyone in any way while I became a fighter. I'm 21 and she's 19, but I can see the effects the abuse had on us in our everyday lives. Sorry this was a long one. I didn't mean for it to be, but I suppose it was therapeutic to write out. Thank you for your attention. My mom and dad decided to burn all my belongings because I wouldn't clean my room. I was 4. Jokes on them, because I never learned. When I was young, probably 5/6, my dad would shower, get cleaned up and ready to go out for the night and head into the city. My mom would drive him into the city about 20 miles round trip so he could get drunk, get smashed and have sex with random women. Then sometimes ring early in the morning and she would pick him up. The family situation was normal apart from this. My parents married young and for legal practical reasons could not get divorced. Ignoring the random sex, it was years later that I learned about that. I never thought it was strange that my dad went out on his own as I was an only child and we lived in the country, so a babysitter was not practical. Looking back on it over the years, mum put up with an extreme amount of crap because dad was a dickless waste of humanity. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.